Hi, I'm Amy Beth Fredrickson, and I'm in Professor Martinez's class in Research in European Medieval History. Unfortunately, I am going to have my second COVID shot on the day before presentations, and so it's very likely that I am going to be sick that day. So what I'm doing is I'm recording it ahead of time, and that way I can be there even if I am sick. I'm planning on being there virtually, just like everyone else is, and I should be able to answer questions at least. I hope you enjoy it.
I approached my topic choice for this semester's research knowing that I wanted to look more into the Normans, but not necessarily to focus on them. I'm interested in the history of science and technology and the interactions between Christianity and Islam, in particular, the ways in which they cooperate, as opposed to focusing on their conflicts. For the medieval era, this led me to Sicily in the mid-12th century, in the court of King Roger II of Sicily. His father was a Norman king who took Sicily from its Muslim rulers. But the younger Roger grew up in a court with Muslims, Christians, and Jews of every description. Roger II, a Christian king, commissioned Muhammad al-Idrisi, a Muslim geographer, to create a world map. The topic of cartography fit my desired direction of study very well. The Mediterranean Sea was a vast geographical separator between the lands populated by Christians and Dar al-Islam, the land of the Muslims. Both cultures used the Mediterranean, trading at the same ports and making maps of the coastlines and islands. And both cultures carried a healthy heaping of hubris, believing themselves superior to the infidels in every way. Humans have been drawing pictures of their world since thousands of years before the Common Era. I've focused my research on the medieval period, as present-day scholars refer to Europe between antiquity and the Renaissance, and the Middle Period, as historians of Islam refer to a roughly similar time. I was looking for some platform of comparison for European maps and Islamic maps, particularly some way of determining whether one ever copied or influenced the other. My search for source material was feast or famine. I was able to check out several books from the Kramer Family Library, but because of the pandemic, I was not able to browse the shelves. I connected with a doctoral candidate in Islamic Studies at Harvard, Connor Dubey, and with Professor Helen Davies, who teaches digital humanities here at UCCS. Each of them pointed me in the direction of good sources to evaluate. Unfortunately, these sources also led me down the rabbit holes of fascinating information that I didn't have time to explore. I had to exercise a great deal of self-control and select only what was most relevant to this paper. I desperately wanted clear empirical data that I could put into a simple chart for easy comparison. This was not as simple as it sounds, but I was able to list a number of aspects that I could use. Which way was up? What was centered on the map? How decorative is it? Does it have sea monsters? Does it have room lines? What's its purpose? How mimetic is it? This last one was difficult for me, and it took weeks for me to figure out how to handle it. Accuracy is a term that modern people use to evaluate maps. This was not necessarily a value Middle Period Europeans or Arabs held. T&O maps were a particular problem. I had assumed that their simplicity indicated an unsophisticated understanding of geography and therefore a more primitive civilization. However, their dates can be as late as the Renaissance. After further research, I realized that the backward-seeming progression of T&O maps was a feature of Islamic cartography, not a glitch. I had to change the way I thought about realism in the art of geography. I ended up adding a section about many erroneous assumptions I discovered in myself. I had to rethink how I organized my data. I had to depend on the analysis that other historians have done instead of sorting myself through hundreds and thousands of maps. The analysis of two conflicting cultures and the tools they created required a restructuring of my thought process. There was no clearly defined distinction between the two cultures' maps in the way they were used, only in the way they were styled. I still categorized the maps into types: world maps, known as Mappa Mundi, and the subtypes such as T and O maps, port maps and nautical charts, strip maps of either coastlines or journeys, works of art that were more status than tool, narrative geographies, and so on. One aspect they both shared was that geographers would get their information by traveling, talking to merchants and sailors, and examining what other geographers published. Yet they made little or no effort to credit these sources. Written narratives moved smoothly from first-hand experience to second-hand knowledge. I was looking for hubris. I found almost nothing that indicated any medieval cartographer dismissed the work of a peer who did not share their religion or culture. There was a suggestion that Idrisi's map was less mimetic in Europe than it was in North Africa, but no support in the theory that he ignored the Europeans in King Roger's court. The geographers evaluated their sources for merit, regardless whether they were co-religionists. I did find an adoration of ancient Greece, in particular Claudius Ptolemy. He created an extensive geography of the known world, including many maps with latitude and longitude, climes, winds, and other information with a high degree of accuracy. Cartographers from many cultures over many centuries studied his work. After wrapping my head around my original question and reconfiguring how I sorted and analyzed the data I discovered, I came to a conclusion. Medieval cartographers of any culture did indeed possess hubris, but it was individual, not religious, and it did not inhibit their choices of sources or the work that they produced. Thank you. Does this bun make my head look big? No? Okay. Hi. Are you helping? I suppose that's helpful. This map is one of the very oldest and most precious. Do I look professional?
Yep.
You're not using any weird filters or anything?
Nope.
Okay. Hello, I am Amy Beth Frederick.